Hey, Mudflap's back with another video. Sorry for the delay. I had to evacuate a hurricane, lost power for a while, but now I'm back and we're going to move forward with more helpful guides. And today I'm going to go over Plaguewing, and the guide is going to try to help sort loot in a manner that's reasonable, efficient, and rewarding for your guildies. There are many methods to distribute loot that work for different guilds, but I would suggest that loot be distributed in a manner that keeps people properly rewarded and motivated. Remember that it is a team game, and we should all be excited for our teammates gearing up because it makes them and us stronger at the same time. Now, that being said, let's go ahead and jump into it. For Noth and 25 man, we have the Robes of Mutation. These are a side grade for disc. No one else is really going to care about this that much. They have a couple other options that are better, but they might not drop right away. So, adapt with RNG how you can. Disc Priest is basically the only one who is probably going to want this off the bat. Bands of Impurity. This is a decent one for a lot of casters, but I would give this to a Shadow Priest before anybody else. This is very, very good for them. And some of the other Bracer slots like Punctilious is more like a Warlock one that they're going after. And if you're trying to spread things out, I would go with Shadow Priest with this first, and after that, whoever needs it. Gloves of the Fallen Wizard. This is an okay hit option for any of the casters that need it. Maybe a mage needs it, maybe a Shadow Priest needs it. Highly unlikely a Warlock would use this as their off piece, even while we're gearing up, because they really want those gloves, the tier gloves, so just those other ones. Now, for the Shadow Priest or the mage, when they're gearing up, even if this isn't this, hit is kind of a special stat. We're evolving our character as we go, and sometimes people are going to ask for weird things because maybe it has hit on it. So it's something to consider when we're passing out loot, or if somebody's looking for an upgrade, consider, the hit pieces kind of throw a wrench in gearing because you need to adapt your setup constantly to make sure you're capped. Thrusting bands, okay. Great for rogues. Ferals might want it sometimes, but it's generally they want the sinners. It just depends on if they need the some hit expertise setup. But if your rogue was coming out of Sunwell with 2-piece tier 6, they'll be using bracers and belt, and they're not going to want this for anything other than survivability. Now, if a rogue assassination or combat is coming in and maybe they want sinners, maybe they want this because they don't have tier 6, then, you can prio them highly. Maybe they're a fresh character, or it's someone's alt who they swapped it to their main for Wrath, and you can figure that out. But if they have tier 6 and they got the 2 set, maybe you go with even a Ret before you go with a Rogue, okay? If the Ret wants this for their hit expertise setup, everyone's trying to reach the cap with whatever other gear drops for them, and we're at the mercy of RNG. The Belt of Potent Chanting, this is not a good piece. You would say maybe a Boomkin could want it, but even the Heroism Badge piece is better than this, so I can't see a world where this wouldn't be a shard for anybody. Maybe alts later down the line if you're just trying to hyper gear them real quick on their way to bigger and better things. Tunic of Masked Suffering. So hunters could use it, but again, they have other options that are better, and Enhance is going to have their tier. There's no world where they're going to want this that I can think of, especially when the Heroism badges give you the chest, and we've seen how fast those drop, right? Leggards of the Undisturbed. These are not very good. So generally, only the Resto Shaman could want it. They're going to want to go for tier. You can give them this as a holdover till they get it, but it's just an okay piece. And it's just going to be a holdover till they get tier. Remember that tier comes quickly. The legs you buy with the Valor badges, but if you don't, just get them from dropping. You know, the Prot token is generally the least contested. Crippled Treads. So this these feet are okay for enhanced, they're okay for hunters, but both of them have way better options out there. So no one's gonna be fighting over these. You can just give it to whoever needs it in the moment. Easy enough. Shoulder Guards of Opportunity. So, you know, the only one these are statted for really well are warriors. But warriors want tier as well. Again, tier comes quickly. This could be a holdover piece for a warrior until they get tier. If for some reason a DK wanted this until they got tier or something else, sure, if no one else wants it, I would give to a warrior before I gave to a DK. Gauntlets of the Disobedient, a block value set for any tank, but it's gloves, so who knows if they'll use it. You'll have had a discussion with your tanks what pieces they need in advance for their mid set, their threat set, whatever else. So if a paladin or a warrior needs these because they're making some block value set for something, which is a you know, a real thing, but you know, that's it. Nothing much to say about those. Poignant Sabatons. BOE. First thing to note about them, these are actually really strong. And even though they're not the best pally feat, you know, only paladins can use them. So there's nothing going on here with the drama other than if you run more than one paladin, which one gets them first. Or they could just buy it for themselves if they really want it. Or maybe your guild can sell this to help other people buy actual BIS BOEs. You know, there are lots of really neat options out there, and the fact that there are so many BOEs from the raids really kind of opens up some interesting options for people. So going on to the necks and the rings, I talk about in my spider ring video. As you can see, they drop off of 5 bosses. So I'm not going to talk about them in every single loot video. That would be insanely redundant. So we'll just go there. If you haven't seen the spider ring video, check it out and go from there. Accursed Spine, Boomkins are the ones that are going to want this. The Surplus Limb and the other haste offhand matriarchs, those are going to be more of the mage, shadow priest, warlock kind of options. They're going to really go for that. Crit just really isn't their thing. They'd rather have the haste and hit on the options, and so those other ones are really what they're going to worry about. And that really opens up things for Boomkins to just come in and get this and just be theirs, right? They don't need to go for those other things. Even if they need the hit, get it somewhere else. Open up slots where it makes sense so that you can combat RNG as a guild and get loot to everyone faster and efficiently. Libram of Radiance. So Ret Paladin, right? Nothing much there. Angry Dread. Frosty Case, right? This weapon for them. Technically good for Unholy as well, but you would give this to Frost before Unholy. Spinning Fate. Rogues. Warriors. This is a holdover piece, basically the next best thing before Envoy of Mortality, but of course, the gun is going to your hunters before it's ever going to some melee fizz. So, but once all the hunters have it, however many you run, that could happen where you just drowning in the guns maybe later on, then they would go from this to that. But I would say equal prio for rogue or warrior. Just depends on what what you guys want to do with your players. You know who isn't getting stuff. You know who is the most reliable. You figure out in your own ways how you would do a tiebreaker for this. On to Heigan. So we have the cloaks, all the cloaks we've done in the Spiderwing video. Check it out if you haven't seen it. Heigan's Putrid Vestments. So this should be Shadow Priest. This is a great hit item for a Bist chest setup. They could go for some other pieces, but we talk about that in the Sartharion one. They could go for the One Drake chest, but other people want it and then don't have as many other options. This is a great option for them, and it opens up other things. Although you can change and adapt based on what drops. Say this isn't dropping and the One Drake one is dropping all the time. Well, then change up your stuff. It's easy enough. When it drops, you'll know what to do based on this kind of information, right? But Shadow Priest would want this. No one really else, anyways. So it's not a drama item. Serene Echoes. This is a great Disc Priest boot option, although the ones from Patchwork are slightly better. These are really good. And then technically some of the Bislists want the Malygos boots, but I wouldn't give that to a Disc Priest. You should give that to your casters. The Disc Priest is going to get hit their haste cap really easy. They're not going to want to keep those boots, which is going to make them a huge waste to give to a Disc Priest. So give the Malygos boots to your casters, to your DPS casters. Gloves of the Dancing Bear. You could give it to a Boomkin as a holdover, but they're gonna have tier already. The heroism badges are dropping off everything. People are just swimming in them, and they use tier. Probably not going to use this. If they for some reason don't have it, sure. Stock skin belt. The same thing I said about the leather bracers off the boss before. You've got druids and rogues that could use this for different setups. It depends on their hit and everything else, but if the rogue has 2-piece tier 6, they should be last on this. But if they don't, then consider them maybe over a feral if the feral wants this instead of tortured. But yeah, that's something to consider. Helm of Pilgrimage, no socket. Ugh. Bindings of the Decrepit. Resto Shaman Bis. No one else wants it. There's nothing really to say more about it. It's just if it drops, they're going to be very happy. Leggings of Colossal Strides. These are an okay holdover. Maybe your Enhanced Shaman goes off-piece legs or Legs of the Honors. I don't know. You could go that way if you're getting really unlucky with the Helm off Malygos or something, but if you don't have tier in the slot or are not going for tier in the slot as an enhance, okay, maybe. And then for hunters, that sure is a lot of haste. That sure is poorly statted. They have other options, but if they want this and the enhance doesn't want it, you know what? While they're waiting for their better stuff, sure, Eruption Scarred Boots, huge item for Ellie and Resto, really good for both, Bis for both. Now, if you run one of each, it's going to be hard to say who you should give it to. You have to consider, have you had a conversation with the healers? Are you going to be dropping the Resto eventually later in the phase to be a DPS spec? If they're going to be Ellie, then there's still going to be Bis for them. Then consider them equal to the Ellie. Now, if you only run one, then this is theirs, right? But if you have to decide between either or, that's something to consider. And also consider, the player, the effort, all the variables that go into seeing who's got what, the upgrade. Breastplate of Tormented Rage, your tanks are going to have their tier. So this is probably a catch-up item for an alt coming back in or something. Nothing crazy. In Chest Guard of Bitter Charms, this is awful. Again, your Holy Paladins will have tier, and it's just not very good, right? Leggards of the Apostle. These are kind of good, but they'll eventually get tier. Now, you're not going to get the leg tier as fast, but you will get it. And it won't take that long, right? Tier will come generally fast, but just not as fast as the ones you got from Heroism. But this could be a holdover. Till then, no one else can wear it. Plate Spell Power gear. Iron Spring Jumpers. So now this is just a weaker version of the Melancholy ones off Malygos, right? And they're BOE. So warriors should be getting the Malygos ones, in my opinion, first. And then if, there's some of the DKs want those, Frost. And for this, if either wants it, you could give it to them if we're having bad luck with the Malygos ones and you do want to try to figure out how to adapt to RNG. But if you want to attempt Fade, or if you're having luck with the Malygos loot and these drop later on, sell them. And then you can buy this loot for other people. If these BOEs drop and you can make money to help the raid in other ways, and because no one wants it, sure, sell it. The trinkets. So the trinkets, again, Spider Wing video, I go over these. They drop in 4. They drop from 4 different bosses. You'll see the rings, the cloaks, the necks, the trinkets, a lot, which is nice because those are things that are generally in past expansions very difficult to acquire. Sigil of Awareness. This is Frostbiss. It should go to them easy enough. Cryptfiend's Bite. Talked about it in Spider video. The Undeath Carrier. So something to consider with this is Feral Druids will use it. They want Journey's End. Hunters might want it as a stat stick. They also want Journey's End. You always give weapons like this that are stat sticks for hunters to Feral Druids first. They get way more out of weapons than anyone else when it comes to just stats from the item. Not talking about weapon damage here. The Predatory Strikes, Talent, all this stuff. They have hidden AP, and then the AP on top of that is multiplied. So they are going to get so much more that if a Feral Druid needs it, even if they're prioed on Journey's End, you still give this to them before you give it to a hunter as a stat stick. That's very important, I think, if you're going to be fair to your raid and if you want to do things efficiently. The only time I would break that is if the Feral Druid has something equivalent already and the hunter has just been very unlucky and has nothing. Yeah, then of course. But everything equal, Feral Druid, no contest. If they want it, right? There are other good things. Cal of Innocent Delight from Loatheb. No socket. We're sharding it. I could only make so many jokes about the no socket gear for Helms. Like, no meta socket is just mega troll. Alright, Boots of Impetuous Ideals. These are a great hit option for basically all the casters. So while there are other options that are better, especially the Malygos ones, if they need hit on the way to that, these are awesome for everybody. And so this is just kind of one of those things where you, as Loot Council, you have an idea of which casters are where with their gear setup, who needs the hit to round out the current area they're in, the current predicament they're in with their gearing, because you basically evolve your gear, as I said earlier, you evolve your character around your hit rating, and then your gear swaps around with that. So don't ever take things away. Again, this is BOE also, but don't throw away pieces. If no one has ever learned this in the past, you keep your hit items that were upgrades, even if you replace them, because you might need it when you get a different upgrade that's bigger than the thing you upgraded in that slot, right? So it's really smart to keep hit items in case you need it later, because it could end up working. Even though you got an upgrade in that spot, you might need it later. Just words for the wise, right? Vest of Vitality. This is awful. Now, I know a lot of times I just say, this is bad, don't worry about it, but I can take a second to just explain why this is bad. Resto Druids do not want crit at all. They're not out there spamming Nourish. They're doing hots that don't crit. So it's a completely wasted thing for them. And then Boomkins have their tier already, so this is wasted. I mean, they don't want 25 MP5 stat weighted into the gear either, so no one can even use this. Okay, so this is trash on an incredible level. Okay. The Foot Wraps of Vile Deceit. Great for combat, great for assassination, although the Megabist setup, should you be so lucky, has Dawnwalkers instead of this for assassination. It just depends if you get your expertise in other areas or not. But also these are amazing for Feral Druids. I would say Feral and combat equal Prio over a Rogue over Ret if they want it. And then, that being said, haste is really, really bad for Ferals, but it's not that great for combat either out of the whole stat weight priority section. But it's, if you were to really have some sort of tiebreaker, it's probably a little better for combat. But again, player over class in this one if it's that close. Grotesque Hand Grips. So MM Hunters could use this. There are better things, Adroit, whatnot. Survival could use it. Enhance once tier. They're okay. Maybe your MM Hunter, if you have one, throw it to them. If Survival wants it for some reason, okay. Nothing crazy here. No drama over this item. Girdle of Unity is a shard. Poorly statted. Holy Paladin's the only ones that could use it. Crit is okay. They would rather have haste and spell power. MP5. As we gear up and go on through the expansion, MP5 becomes more of a troll stat for people, unfortunately. It is helpful, but generally, the other things are going to scale in ways that make MP5 more and more inferior to the other stats. Greaves of Turbulence. Now, this is generally the off-piece slot for the tanks, and this would just be like a shield block setup kind of thing. It's not really that great of a piece, but if a tank wants it for some sort of special setup and they don't have the mega awesome ones from Malygos, then sure, this one's okay. The Impossible Dream. Weapons are usually the most sought after items, but this one's one of the weakest ones, but not by much. It's just not really that sought after. That being said, people could try to be like, oh, I don't want this because I don't want to hurt my prio for some big item. I would recommend never do that to people. If people have prio for some big item and they accept a smaller upgrade, I would keep their prio the same on the big items, because you don't want to incentivize people to try to pass over upgrades that affect your raid, right? So whoever would take this as an upgrade, take it as an upgrade, and they should still be wherever they are in the future for their weapon prio. I think that's the best way to do it, so you don't incentivize some sort of toxic behavior. The Hand of Nerub. This is not very good. It's too fast for combat, or too slow. Sorry, it's not too fast. It would be, if it were faster, that would be great. It's too slow for combat, and it's too fast for a lot of other things. Enhance wouldn't want it. So it's, if somebody for some reason wants it, sure, but I can't think. I would question why they want this. I would want to know why they want this. Fading Glow is the technical BIS one for disc, but it's barely BIS. If they have the Sunwell wands Those are so close to this. It's just a minor upgrade, but it is better. So awesome to get your Bis still. So now we are at the tier tokens. And before I jump into the tier, I just want to go over like tier in phase one. So tier, as we've talked about in other videos, you get it constantly. It's so fast. It comes so fast. You get it from badges, both types, right? You get the heroism ones give you gloves, and they give you chest. Valor give you shoulders and pants, so these can be bought. And then the helm's the only one off KT that you just have to get to drop. Now, when you are a loot council, or if you're somebody who wants to show loot council who you are in your guild, I think it's important that we all look at who took the time to buy their own tier that use it, right? So if we're looking at people and we say, hey, so and so waited, they didn't use their badges on other things, or they didn't even farm badges because they knew they could just get it from raid. Well, maybe you just, even though somebody already has a tier slot, like I know this isn't the same because shoulders are different, but maybe you get them from 10 man or whatnot. But you can give them the big upgrade, even if they have more upgrades, because they showed that they put the time in, that they put the work in, right? You don't want to reward people just because it's the biggest upgrade, because they purposely set themselves up for failure so that they could get more upgrades. That is incredibly toxic. And it's not uncommon in past things that I've seen. My guild doesn't do that, luckily. They know better. But that being said, there's something to be said philosophically about this as well, real quick, before I finish talking about the tier. And that is, I know that there are two types of players when it comes to getting gear for yourself outside of raid. You have the people who have all the free time in the world, and they can just farm and farm and farm. And you have the people that have their families, and they have their jobs, and they've got all these other things, these externalities that they have to worry about, and then try to farm for raid as well. That's completely reasonable. You have to be able to see that that both people have whatever going on. Now, that being said, if somebody doesn't have the time because of all those things to farm all the extra badges, that's fine. You don't kick them out of the raid or something. But if the person who had all the free time put all those hours of work in to get the badges, to get the gear, to help the raid so that they didn't have to be given it, that they actually came in with it, that should matter. That should count for something. Their effort should matter. So I would say philosophically, think about those things when passing out loot, and when you're trying to show your how much value you give to a guild as a whole. Like in a team game, we're all putting in our effort and our worth in these manners. So think about that. For the valorous shoulders. So holy paladins want these. They're good. They want their tier set. This is the best slot for this. I would value them pretty highly on this. The shoulders for Rhett. Again, they want the shoulders. Their set bonuses are great. It's itemized fine. I would value them pretty highly as well. Something to consider. And then your tank. So if you run a prop paladin, if they're your main tank, obviously it's a very common strategy to consider giving them the first upgrades of anything, and that's a very viable strat. You could consider that here, and it would make plenty of sense. So, yeah, that is one way. They do use this. It's great. Their set bonuses are good. The 4 set is okay. It's more about just general stats, right? And tank power. But the Valorous Shoulder Pads of Faith, Disc Priests use this towards their 2 set, and it's statted really well. So I would consider them highly. Yeah. Shadow Priest can use this in certain setups if they need the hit from their shoulders, but they don't use their tier sets. So I wouldn't put them before anyone else on this. I would give it to them if no one else needed. And yeah, that's just a very reasonable way to do that. And then the last piece is the shoulders for warlocks. So AF, awesome for them. It's statted well. The 2 and 4 set are great. They're very powerful. I would consider them highly. But Demo I would consider the highest. On par with maybe your Paladin main tank, if that's how you run it. I would have to decide which one I would give to first. Either way would be great. The first 2, probably those 2, are a great way to increase the power and efficiency of your raid quickly and make things easier. And really, that's the name of the game when you're rewarding people for their effort, is people like things to go smoothly. So if you make good loot decisions, then everyone else is going to have a good time, because now the content, you do better and better each week. Everyone likes to improve each week, and not just themselves as a raid, right? So any way you can be really efficient with gear, you should try. For the prop token, the shoulders are really strong for arms. They're really good. They're statted well. They use their set bonuses, and I know armor pen is really weak right now, but since we all know they need to start stacking it going into phase 2, the warriors in general, if they eventually, once they eventually go Fury, but you could say, yeah, it doesn't give them a lot of value right now, yeah, but they have to start somewhere with the armor pen, right? So yeah, I would value them pretty highly. They use this. I mean, right now, if you run warriors, arms warriors, they're bringing buffs. They're doing the bitch work right now. They've reversed with rogues from last time, but their time will come. The prot warrior. If you run a prot warrior, if it's your main tank, consider giving it to them first. The prot token is very, very minorly contested in most runs. In most guilds, I feel like this is not going to be one of the very big headache pieces. Although tier in general should not be a headache, because you will get it very quickly. People are going to buy it. It's going to drop fast. Eventually, you won't even care about it anymore. The shoulders hunters do want this purely for the stats. I've seen that now they're saying maybe they want their 2 set bonus. It is extremely minimal in what you get from it. It's not something to consider over people who get powerful set bonuses. So I would not consider them highly. They have lots of other really great pieces that they are going to get first, and they have lots of uncontested pieces that they're going to get very quickly. So the hunters will be rewarded for sure. Valorous Earth Shatter Spalders. So if you have a Resto Shaman, the 4 set is awesome. But something to consider. Again, like I said earlier, if you're Resto Shaman, if you're planning on crunching your raid down and you want your Resto to go some sort of DPS spec eventually, maybe you don't give them the first set or even a high set of these if they're not going to end up using them for a long time. You might eventually have them go back to Resto when the content gets harder again, when progression for Ulduar comes out, but you'll have plenty of these to give to people by then. So I wouldn't put them highly unless you're planning on them being part of your core few healers as you make your raid efficient throughout the phase. Valorous Earth Shatter shoulder pads. So these are the best piece for shoulders for Ellie. The set bonuses are very, very weak. Much like a hunter, I wouldn't prio this because of set bonuses. I would prio it because of reliability, effort, and other things if you were to rate them highly, but I generally wouldn't in this slot. There are more efficient ways, unless you have some other circumstance where this player just hasn't gotten any love and you need to fill in a gap, then yeah, any of that goes for any piece, right? If somebody is just a great player and just all the things they're prioed aren't dropping, sometimes you have to adapt, and that is the power of Loot Council and Loot Prios, where you can make sure things go where they need to make sure everyone feels rewarded and motivated. The Valorous Earth Shatter shoulder guards, these are awesome. Shamans are looking for expertise on pieces. This has some, not a lot, but some, and they use this piece anyways because they need their 4 set, which is massive. I would rate them very highly on tier shoulders. Now, Vank, this is going to be a little bit of a headache in the early weeks. The first month of raiding, first 5 weeks maybe, at worst, I think. Actually, just first month, really. The first month of raiding, maybe Vank will be a headache because you probably have a ton of Vank players. They added a 4th class to this tier. It's kind of a headache in general, but in this phase, you can buy tier that you need. So it'll come fast. Eventually, people will just be looking for off pieces, and tier will be who wants it for off spec. That'll be the question every week. But until that part comes, we have to tackle the little headaches. So for rogues, for both combat and assassination, they use this. It's good. The rogues, the combat use the 2 set. It's okay. The 4 set for assassination is pretty good, but it's nothing crazy. It's not 5 crit. It's not 5 haste. So I would rate them moderately highly. If they haven't been getting love, consider them, but I wouldn't make them first. So Frost and Unholy use their tier shoulders. Their 2 set is very good. Either one I would rate pretty highly on who to give it to if Vank dropped. And again, it's one of those things, who hasn't been getting love, because they both use very, very wildly different gear sets for their other off pieces. So your one side's probably going to be getting very lucky and the other isn't. And this is where you can help mitigate that. And then if you run a Blood DK main tank, consider giving it to him first. Just like we've talked about in other videos, their 4 set's actually stronger than the other tanks' 4 set because Icebound Fortitude's on a very short cooldown compared to theirs, so it is significantly better than the other tank 4 sets. So yeah, consider them highly, obviously. Mages, this is a great piece. Their 2 and 4 set are great. They need this. Consider them highly. There's not much more to say about it. It's a great piece, and they want this. But thankfully, Resto Druids don't want this. So again, we talked about crit wasted. They're not trying to get their 4 set where Nourish does anything extra because they won't even use it usually. So that is something to consider with that. Luckily, that's one less headache because they won't need this. And then Boomkin's 4 set is massive. This is really well statted for them. Consider them highly. And then the Feral Shoulders. Now, this is really well statted for them, and they do go for 2 set, and they do use these shoulders, so I would also consider them highly for this. So Vank will be kind of a weird one for a few weeks, but you have all the variables I talked about before we discussed this, before we started discussing tier. Consider all those things. Consider, who's putting in effort, and other things that you always consider: who is reliable, and who's going out of their way to help others. Anything, the intangibles also should matter, I think, in considering people for these things. Now, that being the 25 man, let's go take a look at the 10 real quick. There is a BOE. It's these. Just to look out so you don't end up just auto sharding it. It might sell for more than a shard, probably. Nothing of note in most of these. This is an okay feral tank staff until they get the one from 25 man. Then Loatheb. This is kind of a sleeper trinket. I think you can time this with cooldowns at certain Fizz DPS, and it might be better than people think. I wouldn't just avoid. This is actually pretty good, I think. And then, of course, another shot at tier shoulders. People are going to be doing 10-man because tier exists. They want it fast. It's another shot at it, and you get the 25-man badges out of 10-man because of the changes. So it's a great system to get big stuff. you're going to want to do 10 man. And 10 man is chill, right? There's no reason to get too crazy about what loot drops from 10 man. I'm not going to go over the loot piece because they'll all be replaced very quickly, but you know, have fun with your friends in 10 man. It's a great place to chill. But yeah, that was Plague Wing. I hope that it was help and it gave a little insight into some of the loot distribution options for people. You know, keep an eye out for more videos, guides, and things, and they'll be coming in the future. And like and subscribe, it helps me a lot. That way more people can see this and I can keep making them. And with that, I shall see you in the next one.